Hello everyone, let me ask you something. When was the last time you felt truly close to someone, not just physically close, but emotionally present, where you could feel their heartbeat as if it was speaking to yours? So many couples go through life sharing a home, a bed, even children, but deep inside they whisper the same fear. Why does it still feel so lonely? Intimacy is one of those words we all think we understand, yet when it comes down to living it, most of us feel clumsy, hesitant, even awkward. You might know exactly how to hold her hand in public, but the moment you need to express your longing or to stay present with her in silence, suddenly it feels like you've lost the map. And so we hide behind distractions, work, phones, routines, while the distance quietly grows. But intimacy is not about perfect moves or grand gestures, it's about presence. It's about learning to let someone see you without the mask and knowing how to touch in ways that don't just reach the body but the soul. Building that kind of closeness, both emotional and physical, doesn't need to feel awkward or forced. It can become natural, magnetic, even playful. So let's begin here with the truth that intimacy begins long before you touch each other. It begins with how you show up emotionally, how you create a space where both of you feel safe enough to be fully yourselves. Think about it. When you were younger, perhaps in the early stages of dating, everything felt effortless. The conversation flowed, laughter came easily, and even sitting together in silence carried electricity. Why? Because curiosity was alive. You were interested not just in what the other person said, but in who they were becoming in front of you. Over time, as relationships deepen, that curiosity often gets buried under predictability. You stop asking questions because you think you already know the answers. You stop noticing the little changes in her expression because you assume you've seen it all before, and yet she's not the same person she was last week, last month, or last year. Nor are you. When curiosity dies, intimacy slowly starves. So the first step in building emotional intimacy without awkwardness is reviving that curiosity. Ask yourself, when was the last time I discovered something new about my partner? When was the last time I listened, not to respond, not to fix, but just to understand? Real intimacy thrives not in grand declarations, but in these small, attentive moments. When she shares how her day felt, resist the urge to jump in with solutions. Instead, lean into the moment with simple presence. Let her feel that you are truly hearing her. This doesn't just make her feel valued, it opens a door for vulnerability, which is the foundation of closeness. And vulnerability, let's be honest, often scares us. Especially men. Many of you were taught that strength means control, that emotions are messy, inconvenient, or worse, a sign of weakness. But here's the paradox. The very thing you fear showing is what creates the bond you are secretly longing for. The moment you let her see not just the polished, competent version of you, but the man who sometimes doubts, sometimes struggles, sometimes feels lonely. That's when she feels closest to you, not because she wants you weak, but because she wants you real. Think about the difference between physical intimacy that is mechanical versus physical intimacy that is charged with emotional presence. In one, your body goes through the motions. In the other, your body is speaking the language of your heart. Which one do you think she remembers? Which one do you think lingers in her body the next day, when she's at work, when she's thinking of you? Now, the second step is creating rituals of connection. Intimacy doesn't grow out of random moments. It needs cultivation. Just like a garden needs watering, your relationship needs intentional acts of presence. This doesn't mean grand gestures like weekend getaways or expensive dinners. It means small, daily anchors. It could be as simple as greeting each other with full attention without a phone in your hand. It could be lingering a little longer in that morning hug before the day takes you apart. It could be an evening ritual of sitting together, even for 10 minutes, where the rule is no talk about logistics, no talk about kids or bills, only about what moved you today. These rituals may feel small, but they weave the threads of intimacy over time. They create a rhythm where both partners know here, in this moment, we are not just managing life, we are living it together. And when those small rituals become habits, physical intimacy flows more naturally. It doesn't feel forced because it emerges from a well of emotional closeness that is already alive. Yet many couples avoid these small moments because they are afraid of awkwardness. You might think, what if I sit in silence and it feels heavy? What if I try to hold her and she pulls away? But awkwardness is not a sign that something is wrong. It's a sign that you are stretching into new territory. Growth is often uncomfortable at first. Think about learning a new language. The first words feel clumsy. You stumble, you mispronounce. But with practice, those same words begin to flow. The same is true for intimacy. Awkwardness is not your enemy. It is simply the beginning of fluency in a language you were never properly taught. So instead of avoiding those moments, lean into them. If you try to hold her hand and she seems distracted, don't take it as rejection. Simply say with warmth, I miss this. I just want to feel close to you right now. Vulnerability disarms defensiveness. By naming your intention, you create safety. Suddenly, what could have been an awkward moment turns into a doorway of connection. And this brings us to something subtle but powerful, the energy of playfulness. Too many couples equate intimacy with seriousness, deep talks, heavy emotions, grand declarations. But intimacy also thrives in lightness. Think of the joy of sharing an inside joke, the comfort of a playful nudge, the sweetness of laughter that erupts at the most unexpected time. Play is not childish. It is a way of reminding each other that closeness can be fun, that your relationship is not a duty but a dance. When playfulness enters, awkwardness dissolves, because laughter is the most natural bridge between two people. If you can laugh together, you can love together. And if you can love together, you can grow together in ways that never stop surprising you. So intimacy begins not with the perfect gesture, but with presence, curiosity, vulnerability, rituals of connection, and playfulness. These are the roots that nourish both emotional and physical closeness. And when these roots are alive, everything else, touch, desire, passion, feels less like effort and more like gravity. The truth is, intimacy doesn't live in the extraordinary moments. It lives in the ordinary ones, the ones most of us overlook. A soft glance across the room, the gentle brush of fingers when you hand her a cup, the comfort of sitting together without needing to fill the silence with words. These are not trivial gestures, they are the architecture of closeness. And yet, how often do we let these small opportunities slip away? We convince ourselves that intimacy must wait for the right time, after the stress of work settles, after the kids are older, after the bills are paid. But the right time rarely arrives, because intimacy is not about time, it's about intention. The intimacy you are waiting for tomorrow is built only by the presence you choose today. So let's go deeper into the practices that allow you to create this intimacy without the heaviness of awkwardness. One of the most overlooked yet transformative shifts is learning the art of touch beyond the sexual. In so many relationships, touch becomes functional or sexual, but rarely in between. You hug when you say hello or goodbye. You touch when you initiate sex, but in between, touch often disappears. Yet the human body hungers for touch that is not goal-oriented. A hand resting on the shoulder while you pass in the hallway, fingers gently brushing the back of her neck as she leans over her book. The warmth of a palm resting on her thigh when you're sitting side by side. These forms of touch say, I notice you. I'm here with you. I don't want anything from you in this moment. I just want you to feel me beside you. This type of touch removes pressure, which is why it becomes so powerful. When a woman feels touched without expectation, her body begins to relax. And when her body relaxes, her heart opens. This is how emotional intimacy flows naturally into physical closeness. Now, I want to speak to the importance of creating space. Intimacy is about closeness, yes, but paradoxically, it also requires distance. Without space, there can be no longing. Without longing, there can be no desire. So many couples kill their own intimacy, not because they don't love each other, but because they don't allow space to breathe. They smother each other with routine, with constant presence, with predictability. Think about it. When you first fell in love, there was space. You didn't know everything about each other yet. You didn't live together. You didn't share every detail of your day. There was mystery. And that mystery created electricity. Over time, you may think that sharing everything is intimacy, but too much exposure can sometimes become suffocating. The secret is balance, being close enough to feel safe, but separate enough to still spark curiosity. This means sometimes giving your partner room to miss you. It means not rushing to fill every silence with conversation. It means allowing her to have her own world, her own friendships, her own passions, and having yours as well. Because intimacy is not just about what happens when you are together. It's also about how you think of each other when you are apart. Desire is often born in absence, in imagination. If you want to build intimacy without awkwardness, you must understand the power of distance, just as much as the power of closeness. And here is where many couples struggle. They confuse routine with security. They believe that knowing everything about each other means safety. But real security doesn't come from predictability. It comes from trust. It comes from knowing that even when your partner is away, you are still connected. That when they have their own life, it doesn't threaten yours, it enriches it. So the third key is this: nurture not only your shared world, but also your separate ones. Because when you come back together, you have something new to bring, something to share, something that reignites curiosity. The man who only lives inside the orbit of his relationship eventually loses his magnetism. The man who continues to grow, explore, and expand his own life carries an energy that keeps intimacy alive. Let's pause for a moment here and reflect on how intimacy is felt, not just in words and touch, but in energy. You know this instinctively. Think of the moments when you walked into a room and felt someone's presence before they even spoke. Energy is transmitted not through performance, but through authenticity. If you are distracted, shut down, or emotionally unavailable, your partner feels it immediately. No words are needed. If you are present, grounded, and alive, she feels that too. This is why one of the most powerful ways to build intimacy is to take care of your own inner world. If you are exhausted, disconnected from your own emotions, or constantly numbing yourself, you won't have the energy to connect deeply with another. Intimacy begins with self-connection. When you are at ease with yourself, you bring that ease into the relationship. When you are tuned into your own desires and needs, you are better able to attune to hers. So often, I see couples trying to fix intimacy by focusing only on the relationship when in truth, It begins with the individual. Ask yourself, am I comfortable sitting in silence with myself? Do I know how to listen to my own body, my own feelings? Because if you cannot be intimate with yourself, it will always feel awkward trying to be intimate with another. Now, I want to speak about one of the most underestimated dimensions of intimacy, the language of appreciation. Over time, relationships often accumulate more criticism than gratitude. You notice what she forgot, what she didn't do, what annoyed you. But how often do you name the things you appreciate? How often do you let her know that the way she laughs lights up the room for you, or that the way she touches your arm makes you feel cared for? Appreciation is not about flattery. It is about attention. It tells your partner, I see you. You matter. You still have the power to affect me. And nothing builds intimacy faster than the knowledge that you still impact each other, that your presence still stirs something in the other. But appreciation must be specific. Saying, you're great is nice, but it doesn't land deeply. Saying, the way you looked at me when I walked through the door made me feel like the most important man in the world. That lands. Specificity transforms words into intimacy. And here's the beauty. Appreciation doesn't just make your partner feel good. It also changes you. Because the more you name what you appreciate, the more you begin to notice it. Intimacy is as much about perception as it is about action. When you focus on what you value, you shift the lens through which you see your partner. Suddenly, the little gestures you once overlooked, her smile, her presence, her laughter, become treasures. Now let's weave these pieces together. Intimacy without awkwardness is not a single act or a one-time effort. It is a rhythm. It is the gentle dance between touch and space, presence and absence, seriousness and play, words and silence. When you stop seeing intimacy as something to perform and begin to see it as something to live, the awkwardness falls away. Because you are no longer chasing perfection, you are practicing connection. And connection, unlike performance, cannot fail. If you reach for her hand and she doesn't respond, that doesn't mean you fail. It means the dance continues and you adjust your step. If you try to share a vulnerable feeling and stumble over your words, that's not failure. It's intimacy in its rawest form. Because intimacy is not about being polished, it's about being human. And isn't that what we all long for? To be human together, to be flawed and messy and real and still be loved. To know that we don't have to perform to be worthy of closeness, that we simply have to be willing. Intimacy, in the end, is not about grand strategies. It's about courage. The courage to step into closeness without hiding behind roles, without disguising your true feelings in sarcasm or indifference, without waiting for the perfect moment. So much of the awkwardness people feel around intimacy comes from the belief that they must already know how to do it flawlessly. But you were never taught this language. None of us were. And just like any language, it must be practiced, spoken imperfectly at first, repeated again and again until it begins to flow naturally. The practice of intimacy, then, is not in avoiding mistakes, but in turning those mistakes into connection. When you reach for her and she pulls back, instead of withdrawing into silence, you can smile and say, I wanted to feel close to you. Maybe my timing was off. When you share something vulnerable and stumble on your words, instead of shutting down, you can laugh gently and add, this is hard for me to say, but I don't want to keep it inside. These are not failures. They are living proof that intimacy is alive between you. And here's a truth many men need to hear. Intimacy is not about performance. Not in conversation, not in sex, not in daily life. Performance creates pressure. Pressure creates anxiety. Anxiety creates distance. Presence, on the other hand, creates ease. When you approach intimacy as presence rather than performance, you no longer need to impress. You simply need to be. And being is something you already know how to do. So let's talk about physical intimacy with this in mind. Many men worry about awkwardness in the bedroom, but awkwardness usually comes when you disconnect from yourself or from your partner. When you make sex a goal, an outcome to achieve, you lose the flow of the experience. But intimacy is not a checklist, it is an unfolding. The most magnetic physical intimacy doesn't happen when everything goes perfectly. It happens when two people are attuned enough to adjust, to laugh, to pause, to ask, what feels good right now? Think about it. The sex you remember most is not the one where everything was technically flawless. It's the one where you felt safe enough to let go, where you could laugh when something silly happened, where you could breathe together, where you could explore without fear of judgment. That is intimacy without awkwardness. It is built not on performance but on connection. And here is a secret that many overlook. Desire does not always arise before touch. Sometimes desire is awakened by touch. Waiting until you feel desire before initiating intimacy often means you wait longer than you need to. But when you create moments of non-sexual touch, when you allow your bodies to meet without agenda, desire often follows naturally. So if you want to build physical intimacy without awkwardness, begin small, a hand on her cheek, a kiss that lingers without needing to lead anywhere, a moment of holding her body close, just to breathe together. These gestures lower the walls of pressure. They invite intimacy without demand, and when intimacy is invited rather than demanded, it grows. Now, let's remember that intimacy is not only between you and her, it is also between you and yourself. If you carry shame about your body, your emotions, or your desires, that shame will show up in your intimacy. You may cover it with jokes, or avoid certain situations, or rush through moments so you don't have to feel exposed, but true intimacy requires self-acceptance. When you can accept yourself, not the perfect version, but the whole real version, you give permission for your partner to do the same. This is why so many people find intimacy difficult in midlife. By the time we reach our 30s, 40s, and beyond, we've accumulated experiences, some painful, some disappointing, that make us wary of being fully seen. Maybe you've been rejected before. Maybe you've been told you're too much or not enough. Maybe you've carried a story that closeness always ends in disappointment. These stories live in the body, and they whisper in your ear when you try to open up again. But intimacy is also the place where those stories can begin to heal, because every moment of real connection rewrites the script. Every time you show up authentically and are met with care, the old belief, I'll be rejected if I show who I am, begins to lose its grip. And this is why intimacy is such a profound human need. It doesn't just bring pleasure, it brings healing. So how do you begin rewriting those stories in practice? By daring to bring a little more of yourself each time, by naming your feelings out loud, even if your voice shakes, by allowing silence to linger without rushing to escape it, by asking for what you need not as a demand but as an invitation, by expressing gratitude for what you receive, even if it's small. These are the practices that gradually shift the story from fear to freedom. And I want to emphasize one last thing: intimacy is not static. It is dynamic. It ebbs and flows. There will be seasons when closeness feels effortless, and seasons when it feels like work. There will be nights when you fall asleep in each other's arms, and nights when you turn your backs. This is not failure. It is rhythm, and if you can accept the rhythm rather than panicking when it shifts, intimacy becomes resilient, because intimacy is not measured by the absence of conflict, but by the ability to return to connection after conflict. It is not measured by constant passion, but by the ability to rekindle passion when it dims. It is not measured by how perfectly you love, but by how willing you are to love again and again and again. So, let me leave you with this: intimacy without awkwardness is not the absence of imperfection. It is the willingness to show up imperfectly, and to keep choosing closeness anyway. It is built from curiosity, nurtured with presence, deepened with vulnerability, softened with playfulness, and sustained by appreciation. It is not something you master once. It is something you live daily. And if you are listening right now thinking, but I've already lost it, it's too late, let me tell you, it is never too late. Intimacy is not reserved for the young, the flawless, or the lucky. It is available to anyone willing to risk being seen. Whether you are 30, 50, or 70, intimacy can be rediscovered. All it takes is one moment of courage, one moment of presence, one moment of reaching out without expectation. So take that risk. Put down the mask. Reach for the hand beside you, not as a performance, not as a duty, but as a choice. And when you do, you may find that the awkwardness you feared was never the enemy. It was only the doorway. There is something I want you to consider. Intimacy is not just about what happens between two people in the private spaces of their relationship. It is also about the atmosphere you create around your life together. When the environment is filled with criticism, resentment, or distraction, intimacy struggles to breathe. But when the environment is filled with respect, curiosity, and generosity, intimacy blooms almost effortlessly. Think about the energy of your home. Is it a place where affection is expressed freely? Or is it a place where affection feels rationed, where closeness is something you must earn? Too many couples live as though love is conditional. I will touch you if you've been good to me today. I will be kind to you if you've met my expectations. But intimacy cannot survive in an atmosphere of transaction. It thrives in an atmosphere of generosity. Not generosity as in giving gifts or making sacrifices, but generosity of spirit, the willingness to offer affection, kindness, and warmth simply because you want to, not because it has been earned. When you build a climate of generosity, intimacy becomes less awkward because there is less fear. You are no longer calculating, will I be rejected if I reach out? Will this gesture be welcomed or dismissed? Instead, there is a natural flow of giving and receiving. You trust that affection is welcome here, and when affection is welcome, intimacy becomes playful again, like it was in the beginning. Another overlooked layer of intimacy is storytelling. Relationships are built not only on the present moment, but also on the stories we tell about our lives, who we were, who we are, and who we want to become. Have you noticed how often in the early days of love you told each other stories? You shared childhood memories, funny mistakes, dreams for the future. Those stories created emotional intimacy because they allowed the other person to step into your inner world. Over time, couples often stop sharing stories. The conversation shifts to logistics, to-do lists, complaints and routines. But storytelling is a bridge back to intimacy. Share with your partner not only what happened in your day, but what it meant to you. Tell her about the memory that surfaced when you smelled a certain fragrance, or the dream that woke you last night. Ask her to tell you about a song that reminds her of her teenage years, or a moment she felt truly alive. These stories are not just information, they are invitations. They invite the other person into the hidden corners of your life, and when she accepts the invitation, you are no longer just sharing a life together, you are co-creating one. Now, I want to return to something many people overlook. Intimacy is not just about love, it is also about conflict. The way you fight, the way you disagree is part of the fabric of intimacy. Because intimacy is about being known, and being known includes being seen in your anger, your frustration, your hurt. Many couples avoid intimacy because they fear conflict. They keep things shallow to avoid disruption. But what they don't realize is that avoiding conflict also avoids depth. To build intimacy without awkwardness, you must learn to fight well. Fighting well does not mean avoiding intensity. It means staying connected even in intensity. It means being able to say, I am angry with you, but I am still here. I am frustrated, but I do not withdraw my love. When conflict becomes a place where both people know they will not be abandoned, intimacy deepens. Because the fear that often blocks closeness, the fear of rejection, loses its power. And let's not forget the role of imagination. Intimacy is as much about what is unseen as what is seen. Desire in particular feeds on imagination. Too much exposure, too much routine, too much predictability, and desire fades. But when you allow space for imagination, intimacy regains its spark. This doesn't mean creating drama or playing games. It means allowing mystery to remain part of your relationship. Surprise your partner in small ways. Leave a note where she doesn't expect it. Change the rhythm of your day and invite her into something new. Play with anticipation. Send a message that hints at what's to come tonight, not as pressure but as a playful spark. These small acts of imagination remind your partner that you are still capable of surprise. And surprise is one of the most powerful aphrodisiacs in long-term relationships. Here's something else: intimacy doesn't always need words. Sometimes the most intimate moments are silent. The way you look into her eyes without rushing to speak. The way you hold her, letting your breath synchronize with hers. The way you kiss her slowly, as though time has paused. Silence, when it is full of presence, is not empty, it is profound. Many couples rush to fill silence because they fear awkwardness, but if you can learn to be silent together, you have learned one of the deepest forms of intimacy. And I want to bring this back to you, the man who is listening, because often men carry a specific kind of burden in intimacy. You may feel that it is your role to lead, to initiate, to always know what to do. And that expectation can create enormous pressure. But I want you to know you don't need to have all the answers. You don't need to always know the perfect thing to say or the perfect move to make. Intimacy is not about perfection. It is about presence. If you can show up even clumsily, even with uncertainty, that is enough. Because intimacy is not about impressing your partner. It is about letting yourself be seen. And when you dare to be seen, even in your awkwardness, you often discover that what you feared would push her away is exactly what draws her closer. So let me remind you, intimacy is not the absence of awkwardness. Intimacy is the ability to transform awkwardness into closeness. It is the laugh that follows the stumble, the tenderness that follows the mistake, the reassurance that follows the fear. This is the secret most people never learn. Awkwardness is not the enemy of intimacy. It is the proof that intimacy is alive, that something real is happening. And if you can embrace that truth, then every awkward moment becomes not something to avoid, but something to cherish. Because it means you are no longer hiding. It means you are trying. It means you are reaching out. And that reaching, that courage to reach, is the essence of intimacy itself. If there is one truth I want you to carry with you, it is this: intimacy is not a destination. It is a practice. It is not something you achieve once and then hold forever. It is something you build, nurture, and renew again and again in the smallest of ways. So many people believe intimacy must look like constant passion, like the movies, like endless chemistry that never fades. But the reality is, intimacy is not about a permanent state of fireworks. It is about creating a relationship where you can return to connection, no matter how many times life pulls you apart, because life will pull you apart through stress, responsibilities, disappointments, even through boredom. What matters is not avoiding those separations, but knowing how to find your way back. And how do you find your way back? With presence, with curiosity, with vulnerability, with playfulness, with appreciation. These are not abstract ideas, they are daily choices. You choose to look at her when she speaks. Instead of glancing at your phone, you choose to let her see your uncertainty. Instead of hiding behind defensiveness, you choose to laugh with her. Even when the day has been heavy, you choose to name what you cherish instead of only naming what you dislike. These small choices build intimacy brick by brick until one day you realize you are no longer living side by side, but face to face. Now, I want you to imagine this. You are sitting across from your partner, and instead of feeling pressure to say the perfect thing, you simply let yourself be present. You look into her eyes and you allow the silence to stretch. In that silence, you feel her breathing, you feel your own heartbeat, and for a moment, the world slows down. That is intimacy, not complicated, not forced. Just being here together. So many men tell me they fear intimacy because they equate it with weakness. They think being vulnerable means losing power. But intimacy is not weakness. It is strength of the highest order. It takes strength to let someone see the parts of you you've hidden. It takes courage to stay present when you want to run. It takes power to love, not with armor, but with openness. And for women, intimacy is rarely about perfection. It is about presence. She is not longing for the flawless gesture, but for the real one. The way your hand trembles when you reach for her. The way your voice softens when you admit, I missed you. These are the moments that linger. These are the moments that she remembers, not because they were smooth, but because they were real. This is why intimacy is never about eliminating awkwardness. It is about transforming awkwardness into closeness. The stumbles become laughter. The silence becomes comfort. The imperfections become the proof that you are alive together. And I want you to hear this clearly. Intimacy is not reserved for the lucky few. It is not something only young lovers experience or something that belongs only to people without scars. Intimacy is possible at any age, in any stage, with any history. Because intimacy is not about what you look like, what you've achieved, or what you've lost. It is about your willingness to show up right now as you are. Maybe you are 30 and realizing that routine has dulled your connection. Maybe you are 40 and carrying the weight of disappointments. Maybe you are 50 or beyond, wondering if it's too late to rediscover desire. Wherever you are, intimacy is still possible. All it takes is one step, one moment of reaching instead of retreating. One word of appreciation instead of criticism. One gesture of touch without demand. And as you practice, you will see how the smallest acts can transform the atmosphere between you. The goodnight kiss that lingers. The playful text in the middle of the day. The way you choose to sit next to her instead of across the room. These are not insignificant. They are the seeds of intimacy, and when planted consistently, they grow into a garden that feeds both of you. Now, I want to leave you with this reflection. What do you want your partner to remember about being with you? Not the gifts you gave, not the accomplishments you achieved, but the way she felt in your presence. Did she feel cherished? Did she feel seen? Did she feel safe enough to be herself? Because in the end, intimacy is not about what you do. It is about how you make each other feel. And so, my invitation for you is this: begin today. Do not wait for the perfect moment. Do not wait for the awkwardness to disappear. Step into it. Reach out, speak, listen, laugh. Let yourself be human with the one you love, because intimacy is not about perfection. It is about connection. And if you take this to heart, if you dare to live with presence, curiosity, vulnerability, playfulness, and appreciation, you will discover something beautiful. Intimacy is not something to be achieved. It is something to be lived. And in living it, you will not only deepen your connection with your partner, you will deepen your connection with yourself. So here's to intimacy that feels alive. Here's to love that is real. Here's to connection without masks, without fear, without shame. And here's to the courage it takes to keep choosing closeness again and again, no matter how many times you've stumbled. If these words spoke to you, I invite you to share your thoughts in the comments. Let us create a space where we talk honestly about intimacy, not as a performance, not as a cliche, but as the most human thing we can experience. And if you found this helpful, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more conversations that help us love more deeply, live more fully, and connect more authentically. Because intimacy is not just about what happens between you and your partner. It is about the life you create together. And that life begins always with the courage to be seen.